It's fabulous to see you all here. Had such a crowd, not surprising, but it's wonderful to see you all here. And good afternoon. I'm Tim Marshall. I'm the Provost of the New School, and it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to this very special event, a dialogue between two great minds, Bell Hooks and Cornel West. Dr. Hooks joins us this week. Yeah, that's worth another applause. As many of you will know, Dr. Hooks joins us this week as scholar in residence. I think this is her second or third time here. And this conversation marks the midpoint of this week's events. Students come to the New School to understand, contribute to, and succeed in a rapidly changing society. We are proud to host this series of week-long residencies with Dr. Hooks to help foster the critical thinking necessary for this challenge. And I'm deeply honored now to introduce you to our distinguished guests, whom I'm sure you already know, but I'll introduce them nevertheless. Cornel West is a prominent and provocative democratic intellectual. That's what they say. He is Professor of Philosophy and Christian Practice at the Union Theological Seminary and Professor Emeritus at Princeton University. Dr. West has also taught at Yale, Harvard, and the University of Paris. He has written 20 books and edited a further 13. Though best known for his classics Race Matters and Democracy Matters and his memoir Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud, Dr. West's most recent book is the highly anticipated Black Prophetic Fire, which is due to be released this month in October and is already receiving critical acclaim. Any day now?
Yeah, just today was the first day, but
Today.
I'd rather be here with that.
Excellent. So this is kind of a book launch as well, I guess. Bell Hooks is among the leading public intellectuals of her generation. Her writings cover a broad range of topics, including gender, race, teaching, and contemporary culture. This fall marks the 20th anniversary of the publication of Teaching to Transgress, Education as Practice of Freedom, Dr. Hooks' seminal book on educational practices. This week-long residency is an opportunity for the New School community to directly engage with Dr. Hooks and her commitment to education and learning as a place, to quote, where paradise can be created. So please join me in welcoming Bell Hooks and Cornel West. Over to you.
Education as the practice of freedom. Is it on? Yeah. Cornel and I have been having that conversation. Cornel says for 30 years?
30 years.
So we are excited to be here at the New School today. I really wanted to start with a bit of a focus on Cornel because he has embodied in the last few years so much the lone dissident thinker, going against the grain. So I want him to tell us what does that feel like to not, everybody used to say, oh, Cornel West, he's so brilliant, he's so deep. And then when Cornel started espousing viewpoints that people didn't care for, they'd be like, your man Cornel, Bell, he's crazy, he's losing it. You need to talk to him. So I want Cornel to talk to us. Because, Sweet Honey and the Rock say, when you work for freedom, you cannot rest. That's Cornel really has not rested. I was just on him about how many things he's even doing today. So I want him to talk about what sustains him, his spiritual practice, what sustains him. Come on over, my brother.
All right, my dear sister. Yeah, well, I just want to start by saying that it is a gargantuan blessing to stand next to my dear sister of now 30 years. It was exactly 30 years ago we arrived in New Haven as professors at Yale and decided then to be faithful unto death in terms of following our calling, not just career, that our vocation, not just our profession. And together to be able to work together and struggle together and write the book together. We were talking about dancing at the nightclub Brick and Wood on the chocolate side of New Haven together. And the 30 years later, one, just to be standing in and of itself is a blessing, is a major achievement. And so when I think of what I've gone through in the last 3 years, I cannot separate it from what in my own black prophetic tradition we call precious memories.
All right.
That connect us to something bigger than us so that somehow we can preserve a commitment to integrity and honesty and decency, and to do it in such a way that you're always part of a network or a community or a tradition of struggle. And bell hooks for me, as you all know, not just in Breaking Bread, that's 1991, was it, something like that? Yeah, that's like 23 years ago. But bell hooks for me has always been one of those central figures and sisters and comrade that allow me to somehow feel as if I can still be a force for good. And not just intellectually, but also morally and also spiritually and also politically. And the fact that it's so rare to have a towering public intellectual who puts love at the center of her theoretical and practical work. And that is my tradition.
All right.
It's John Coltrane's Love Supreme. It's the Caravan of Love of the Isley Brothers. It's the love train, not just of the OJs, but the one Curtis Mayfield had in mind when he wrote People Get Ready. And that's crucial because we come from a people who've been so hated.
All right.
And been so despised and been so terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized. How do you find some kind of intellectual, spiritual, moral resources to sustain yourself in order to try both to tell the truth, expose the lies, but also to try to keep the love of truth and justice and neighbor? And of course, as a Christian, I try to love my enemies.
And how's that coming?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, Samuel Beckett says, try again, fail better. Try again, fail again, fail better.
So are you saying that spirituality sustains you? The work itself, is it sustaining or is it draining?
No, it is sustaining. It is sustaining because, again, you know, you try. For me, the real models are the jazz musicians and the blues women. And when you hear that B.B. King, I'm told, is sick, but he's almost 90 years old, he still does over 250 gigs a year. It's only 365 days in the year. So if I'll do 125, I'm running far behind the king of the blues. And why? Because you find joy in what you do. So that's that is sustained. No, that's real. And we live in a culture, market-driven culture, commodified culture, that's a joyless quest for pleasure. So the pleasure is insatiable, you never get enough, and yet at the same time, it's so difficult to gain access to the joy, and that's why the precious memories are crucial, because the precious memories are sources not of pleasure, but of joy. It might have some pleasurable dimensions to it. We've had some pleasurable dimensions we won't get into right now. But we talking about joy right now, y'all. We talking about joy right now. So that but that's what keeps you going. And
Well,
that's,
I
that's
think
fundamental.
that when Cornel and I decided to have our conversation, we were at Yale together, both youngins in the Yale pantheon. It was itself a transgression because nobody had really seen an adult black man and black woman stand up and talk together, disagree together, but radiate love and light. And we were on it. There wasn't any topic that we didn't feel we could cover.
That's true.
And it was really a kind of glorious collegial moment, one that you don't often get in academia. And Breaking Bread was, for us, the culmination of that conversation. Cornel and I just recently did a 2-hour follow-up that I hope to, I have opened an institute. Cornel came, the Bell Hooks Institute. Brother Joseph came. Unfortunately, when Cornel was there, we had some logistical problems, like a tree falling over the driveway. But you know,
we worked it out. We went on anyhow.
Mm-hmm. And part of what we hope the institute will provide a space for contemplation, dreaming, critical thinking. And Cornel has been my partner in continually validating the value of critical thinking. I was telling him earlier that I was disappointed because when I told several black women academics, prominent academics, that I was going to open this Bell Hooks Institute, they were really hard on me, like, you don't know what you're doing. You don't have the skills. You need to go ahead and place your papers, you know, with a Vassar or a Smith. And I kept saying, well, I want my papers to be where my people can walk in the door. And they were like, you're dreaming if you think your people can walk in the door. But let me tell you this. If you were here Friday night, I talked about the fact that when Rutledge bought Teaching to Transgress, they said, you know, our sales force doesn't understand this word, transgress. They don't know how they're going to sell this book. Are you willing to come and talk to them? And, you know, naive, I was shocked. It was all white men. And when I went there, I had brought a letter from an older black woman. She said, normally, I send this $10 tithe to my church, but I'm sending it to you because your book changed my way of thinking. Then I had the letter from the prisoner that said, I made your name a household word around this prison. We argue, we disagree, and we read our bell hooks. And then I had a letter from a child, and I was saying to them, there's nothing to fear about the word transgress. It just means to push against the boundaries. And when I read those letters from just everyday people out in the world, not academic people, but people who were saying, this work matters to us.
Yes.
And those of you who were with me and Laverne Cox last night, we had that amazing introduction. To have that young woman stand there and say that she'd been a meth-using addict, that she had been down, 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 and she read bell hooks, and it was one of the forces that lifted her up. I mean, who could not be overflowing with joy?
Absolutely.
Because I am doing what the divine calls me to do, as Cornel is doing what the divine calls him to do and has been these past few years. I told him, I said, well, you know, we'll say talking about Obama to the end, because we know when Cornel gets on Obama.
No.
But both Cornel and I have been obsessed with the notion of prophecy and the role of spiritual calling in your vocation. I was saying to someone today that people don't realize there's nothing I've written that I didn't take it to my spirit, Holy Spirit, to see, is this where I should go? Because like when I was first asked to write a children's book, and I was like, what? I don't like children that much. I'm an intellectual. I'm not even happy. But in the middle of the night, I got that calling. You know, I'm lying in the bed. It's midnight. And I'm hearing, girl pie hair smells clean and sweet. It's soft like cotton, flower petal, billowy soft, a halo, a crown, a covering for heads that are round. So I'm up in that night, sitting in my red chair here in New York City, no heat, it's cold, but I am following the direction of Spirit. Yes, Spirit said, Belle, it's time for you to take this turn and help the children see things differently, feel things differently. Amen.
No, that's real. That's real. That's just so real. Let me ask you this question, though, that how do you think the prophetic tradition in general, but the black prophetic tradition in particular, is doing in our neoliberal imperial regime?
Well, I think that, you know, I use that phrase, imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And what we know is that regime is choking our spiritual traditions to death.
Yes.
It's blinding us. And we are lost in the wilderness, collectively. And so, I know that you and I, we are people of hope, but sometimes it's very hard.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a young black woman student who braids my hair. She comes over with her 4-year-old. The 4-year-old always has her white dolls, and she speaks her deep hatred of things black. I mean, growing up in the segregated South, in the apartheid there, I had never heard any black person speak their deep hatred of things black. But a 4-year-old, she was like, well, the little girls at school told me I can't be Cinderella because Cinderella ain't black. And, you know, I tried to reason I tried to bribe. I tried to cajole. But this little girl's internalized racism was deeply fixed, 4 years old.
4 years old.
And yet people don't want to see that we have a serious problem that begins with our children. The education for critical consciousness we are not doing for children.
Absolutely.
And I think that one of the things we have to admit, Cornel, our relationship to the prophetic tradition started when we were children. I mean, I just recently wrote a thing for a communist journal, and I was writing about the fact that...
We got a revolutionary communist right there, Carl Dix. You
From-
understand. Love him, love him, love him, love him, love him.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, go right ahead.
You know, from the time I was 6 years old, I had to read Matthew 25.
Oh,
You know what
Lord,
Matthew
the
25?
least of these.
Yes. Unless you do to the least of
That's
these,
right, that's
you
right.
don't do to me. Every day of my life, every Sunday, I read that for the children's offering. And I was like, how could I not grow up to be on the left? Because that whole passage in Matthew was about being on the left, on realizing that it's who you serve
That's true.
that determines the quality of your
But
being.
most Christians in America manage to do that, though. You read it
mean-
every Sunday and still don't understand what it means to be in solidarity with the
Well,
rest of that earth.
evangelical Christianity especially is one of the most corrupt ways of thinking.
Commodified, commercialized
Exactly.
to the core.
And I mean, I was telling somebody, I love those evangelical preachers on Sunday morning. I listen to them. It's all about prosperity
That's
and
right.
what you can get. And you think, wow, you know, why are people eating that up? You know, black people, you look at Joel Osteen's audience. We may be in the academy saying, how can we get diversity? Joel Osteen doesn't have any problems getting diversity.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't
And
that the truth?
all of the evangelicals that are pushing prosperity, the prayer of Jabez guy, I'm forgetting his name, but so the question for us becomes, Cornel, how can we in any way bring back a liberatory spirituality to communities that are so devastated? I have pastoral counseling every Tuesday, and the pastor was telling me that in the past months, a number of black ministers have committed suicide. And he was saying that they had committed suicide in part because they feel they can't live up to what we are told is the kind of standard one should have to be able to serve. And we were talking about how dangerous that is. Like if the ministers can't keep hope alive in their congregations, if they can't live in integrity, because you know a lot of this stuff is sexual. It's a lot about what people are doing sexual while they're saying one other thing. And it creates a despair, not just in the person who's violating their own beliefs and values, but in the congregations that they serve.
That's very real. You know, I was blessed to preach at a church in Newark just last year. And the pastor was telling me they had 54 funerals in 1 year. You only got 52 weeks in the year. And the vast number were precious brothers and sisters between 18 and 26. I mean, that's the killing fields of neoliberal imperial America.
All right.
Ferguson is just a peak of the iceberg in that sense. And we haven't got to the soul murder, the spiritual death on the inside with these decrepit school systems where rich kids get taught and poor kids get tested. So it's hard for their imaginations and their intelligence to be developed. No music, no arts whatsoever, and so on, you know.
When I was at Yale, we would have these debates about Cornel, and somebody would say, well, he's not a real preacher. I mean, he's not gone to seminary. And I always remember Flora Bridges. She said, well, all I know is I went to church the other night and Cornel preached, and 20-some people joined the church. So she was like, the truth of whether or not he was called was there in the practice. So that when we talk about theory and practice, it's all about how we can move into that space where we practice is real. It's deep.
But
Because
both of us have a ministry of teaching.
Oh, absolutely.
And a vocation of teaching in that sense. I think it's a real sign of divine wisdom that I've never been called to preach. No, because I've got too much street inside of me. And I just recognize
I don't buy into that dichotomy. Because I don't serve a punishing God or a dominating God. The God I serve is totally about love. And what is love calling me to do? And sometimes, Cornel, you have to admit, the Spirit catches hold of you. And you be up doing something that you think, I didn't blend on that.
That's very true.
It's like I had this conference a week ago or so, Queer for a Day, Queer Now and Always. And different white men were speaking at the conference, and one of the white men was talking about how they couldn't get their voice heard. And I said, I felt Martin Luther King channel me right in that moment and said, preach the word, Bill. And I went right directly to John Crawford, and I said, here is a black man that had enough respect for the humanity of white men that he felt he could speak to them and say, this isn't real, and they would hear him. And they had no respect for him, his embodied life, but that they could get on a phone with a disembodied voice, and that voice could have so much power, no matter what it was saying. And I was like, here we have the quintessential difference between black maleness and white maleness. And yet here were these affluent, privileged white men saying that they didn't have a voice. They didn't feel free to speak. And, one of the lessons of our day was that part of what we have to do from places of privilege is listen. And we have to listen in those situations where, when I thought about it, I thought, wow, who is John Crawford? Because I told Cornel, us old black people, that John Crawford couldn't have been 60 years old or 50 years old, because our sense that white people will kill us, that racist white people will destroy us, has been bred into us.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
From the time we're born. So that the idea that we would trust, that we could walk anywhere with a play gun in this nation wouldn't be there. So I really raised the question, Oman, how much did John's action have to do with being 28-year-old and being in that cognitive dissonance that so many of you in this room are in? That on one hand, white supremacy is real, patriarchy is real, but then you think you can strut out in your daily life and carry on like, well, it's not really real. It's not really going to hurt me. It's not really going to endanger me. And we know it's endangering us. Patriarchy is killing some woman somewhere, even as I speak. Some woman who felt like, that doesn't have domestic violence, that has nothing to do with me. I'm in control. I can take care of myself. I mean, how many of us have thought that all the way to the doctor, or all the way to the grave? I can take care of myself. That cognitive dissonance. I think this is a generational divide that is very interesting, because all of you young students in this room that are so smart and read and know so much, but then when it comes to the real everyday life experience, whether we're talking Oscar Grant, John Crawford, of how we live in the world, you can still have some faith and trust in the essential core humanity of white people, even when they're coming at you with guns and hate. It's pretty amazing.
Lord,
I always say black people are some of the most forgiving people on the planet. But we'll be like,
Now, that's real. But the flip side of that, though, is that we're gonna flip it. But the flip side of it is that black people always are also some of the most scared people in the world.
All right.
See, that's what it is to be niggerized. You see, when you are niggerized, you are told you're less beautiful, less intelligent, less moral, and you will have fear at the center of who you are because of the terror that will come at you.
I call it colonized, but
yes, but it's true. But it's true. But as we know, there's some forms of colonization where those who are colonized are not niggerized.
Uh-oh, he got to break that one down. I don't understand that one.
For example, Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, British colonial experience in Jamaica, and the Maroons and so forth. They were less niggerized than black people in the United States.
All right, talk about it.
You say to me? Straighten their backs up and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean that Marley wasn't trying to learn from Curtis Mayfield. It was first Bob Marley and the Impressions, then the Wailers. Not the whiners, the Wailers. That's a very important distinction. Very important distinction. But I say that because you and I, we were blessed with one of the greatest gifts possible, which is undeserved love from older generation. All the challenges that love was felt, whereas we've got so many precious young brothers and sisters, not just black and brown and red and yellow. This cuts on the vanilla side of town, too. But to feel unloved, to have a vicious system that leaves you economically abandoned and socially neglected, to have your family weak, your community feeble, and then to have the culture of mass weapons of distraction coming at you every day with white supremacist stereotypes, like that little precious 4-year-old you talked about, you see. Well, what is a young person to do?
All right.
You see, that's what you and I didn't have to worry about, because, we get down and out. I mean, I always tell young folk when I speak in a lot of high schools, and I said, can you all imagine what your life would be like if the only music you could listen to was created after 2001? You see, saying no Aretha, no Donna Hathaway, no Luther Vandross, no Sarah Vaughan, no Duke Ellington, no Mary Lou Williams, nothing. And we ain't got to Stephen Sondheim and Bernstein, just that little thin, mechanized stuff. The drummer can't get the drummer song like Clyde Stubblefield or James Brown, because it's just a machine. Play faster. Oh, no, it's the machine. Hit the drummer song. Now I'm feeling it. It's the machine. Well, let me hit the button. No, I want the drummer. Kids can't play the instruments. Trying to hear somebody sing a song. 1 out of 3 of them singing out of tune, but they're still millionaires. And then for us, there's no dramatics, no stylistics, no main ingredients, no whispers, no temptations, no miracles, no enchantment, no blue magic. Y'all know who those groups are? Yes. What is distinctive about those groups? And they listen, that's right, they listen. They got a faculty of receptivity. So Ron Banks hits it, DJ Reynolds hits it, David Russell hits it, Eddie Kendricks hits it, Otis Williams hits it. They're listening.
That's the only redeeming feature, I would say, of the James Brown movie.
Oh, that was, you saw this? Yeah. That's true.
Because you saw that he was listening.
And collaborative all the way down. The Roots, I just had a wonderful dialogue with Questlove. The Roots is the last hip-hop band.
Tell us what you mean by that.
That is to say that, and it's not just the young people, it's these greedy oligarchs who control radio and recording and video all at the same time, so they got performance, radio, as well as presentation. And they do not allow for the Boys to Men or the Atlantic Stars or the Midnight Stars. They want one person they can control, make sure they control all of their products, including not just the records, but all the different shirts and so forth and so on, and the performances for money. And you turn them over fast.
That's why Dave Chappelle caused such a stir. And yes, I don't know if you've heard him say, that here's Dave Chappelle with a whole audience of attractive young Benetton white people. And they're wanting to know, does he like white people? And he says that in his deeper inner core, race is not an issue. But he said, when you are in an industry and you walk away from $50 million, you will see the curtain will drop. And you will see the real white people. And they are not you. Because what he was really saying was, you will see the capitalists, the imperialists, the capitalists. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that one of the things they were constantly trying to make Dave Chappelle do was put on a dress, be a prostitute. And one of the things he says is, why does a black male comedian always have to put on a dress? And when you think about the layers of that misogyny, that racialized sexism, the hatred of black women and using the black male body to be the instrumentality of diminishment of the black female body. And he was not willing to do that. And so when he began to show that awareness, that the critical consciousness, himself as a critical thinker, I mean, and this is something we're dealing with deep. He could not be in that world anymore. And I can tell you that that world will never receive him in the way that they did before.
Oh, that's true.
Because he showed that he was capable of holding on to his critical consciousness while making money. And we saw that when he realized that the white people were laughing at things that they were not meant to be laughing at. And he saw himself critically. So that when we talk about decolonization, we have to understand that critical reflection is crucial to the decolonizing of our minds. Even though years ago when I was telling Cornel, I met some man that wasn't very intellectual, Cornel was like, well, he don't need to be intellectual, Belle. You can talk to me. Black, and it's what, and this is what Cornel West said to me, and I'll ask him, has he changed this opinion? He told me at my kitchen table, black men do not want to be existentially self-reflective, bell hugs. Do you still believe that, Cornel?
No, I was lying. I was just trying to, love can trump the truth sometimes.
What?
No, because I mean, I got my own brother. He one of the most existential reflective brothers of late modernity. And he is as deep as they come.
Cornel gets are we talking about the love thing? We're talking about the black man, black woman thing. Hey, you got me on that, right?
But I'm talking about, but the critical reflection. It's the critical reflection. There's a lot of brothers who are involved in critical. All I was saying to you is that given your...
you know what we say in the black church? Fix it, Pastor.
Fix it, Pastor.
Fix it.
No, what I was saying to you was that I could see the direction of the flow of your heart. And I could tell that it looks as if there was some real possibilities here, and I didn't want you to trump it by somehow not giving this brother a chance simply because he had not read Paulo Freire. Now, you would find out, because the fruit is going to come one way or the other, right? But you don't want to cut him off. Because, I was with some sisters who wasn't that intellectual. And I had the time of my life.
See,
I mean, I married a couple of them, but it'll go right in.
That was part of the wisdom he shared with me with Belle. Part of why we friends.
I'm married to a lady.
Part of why we friends. If I want to have a deep intellectual conversation, I just come over to you and we can have a deep intellectual conversation. That's not what I'm trying to do at home. And so...
Well, no, it's not that I didn't want it, but you can't have everything. You can't have everything. Woo, I should have come ready for this kid.
So, okay, Cornel.
No, but we do want to tell the truth.
Then we want you to...
We do want to tell the truth.
We want you to throw down around the issues of black male misogyny, sexism.
Absolutely.
Have we progressed? I mean, this was a central agenda for us when we wrote Breaking Bread, that we wanted to create that space of dialogue. We wanted to be exemplars ourselves. How are we doing?
I think that, like you, I think in this particular moment of this empire and civilization, even given the upward mobility at the material financial level for the upper middle classes, spiritually, morally, existentially, it's a major setback, regress, and retreat. And I'll tell you what I mean. You look at the upper middle class, black upper middle class.
Okay.
A result of civil rights movement against white supremacist order. Jim Crow Sr. broke the back of it. Here comes Jim Crow Jr., new forms of segregation and so on. But you end up with a black upper middle class, which has been reniggerized. And what I mean by that is you got position, power, prosperity, but they still scared. They still
Okay,
intimidate.
I'll let you talk about Obama now.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about Obama. No, I'm not talking about Obama because Obama's different. He's head of the empire. That's a whole different dynamic, you see. But then our working class, like the working class in America as a whole, massive transfer of wealth from them to 1%. See? So they're devastated. Then you got the land grab and the power grab in terms of the cities, the gentrification. Where are they going? Very few people keeping track. Then you got the very poor. Stop mass incarceration. Me and Brother Carl Dix this particular month, right? Mass incarceration, miseducation, genocidal effect. You see, I taught in prison for 37 years. When we were working, teaching in prison then, I can see the difference between 1979 when I started teaching and my Rawway class in New Jersey at Rawway State Prison on Friday nights. Not just the exponential growth in population, but the spiritual condition is different. They have very little to fall back on. So their hearts are very hard and their conscience is very coarse and they feel as if they're in the world all by themselves and it's just survival of the slickest, which is a mirror of Wall Street. Thou shalt not get caught for criminality.
Okay.
And they commit crimes, they don't go to jail. They sip tea with the president at the White House, Jamie Dimon and all the others, you see.
So what does that mean for us as black men and women in the heteronormative space?
It means that we've got to just be true to our precious memories and commitment to integrity and recognize it looks as if at the moment we don't have a chance of a snowball in hell to win, but we proceed anyway because of the love that we have and because of the people who loved us. Which means you have to radically cut against that grain.
Well, I'm wanting him to give us some concrete ways that we radically cut against that grain.
Well, you got to form networks.
Okay.
You got to form, like your Sisters of the Yam.
Which I was with Cornel at Yale when I started my Black Women's Group.
Oh, that was rich. Y'all
Sisters
let
of
me
the
in,
Yam.
too. I was one of the Sisters of the Yam. That was rich.
But no,
but there was that space.
Everybody wanted me and Cornel to be a couple. Because it was like, oh, the brilliant black man and the brilliant black woman. But he done already told us that was not what he was seeking. that was not the type of partnership. You have to read his book. What is it? The Love Book?
Which one is that
the one
now?
where you tell your stories.
Brother West, Living and Loving Out Loud.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because Brother West...
Well, there's different ways of loving, though, Bell.
Brother West was a player. So now that we know, over the years, he has raised his feminist consciousness. Are you still...
But what evidence you got for that? No, I'm just kidding. You're absolutely right. And womanist consciousness, too.
Because I was going to say now, when he was in my living room at the Bell Hooks Institute speaking, and I said something about his sexism, he was like, my sexism? You know, I feel that I have stayed on the forefront of feminist struggle. And so talk a little bit about Hillary, because I used to be on her tip.
Oh, Hillary?
Yes.
Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
Lord have mercy.
I mean, you all may laugh, but for many of us, this has been a real crisis in terms of how we frame feminism, how we frame sisterhood, political solidarity. I confess, I transgress. I wanted Hillary over Obama because I saw some radical seeds in her that I didn't see in him where women were concerned. Well, exactly. Yeah. We know that clearly now.
Well, they both are war criminals. Yeah. Both of them war criminals. That's true. But Hillary has a longer history of neoliberal opportunism because she's older. But at the same time, as a symbol, now see, Obama as a symbol is very important.
He wasn't to me, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. It's not just what he was in and of himself, but what he was in the eyes of the vast majority of precious black people.
Okay.
See, when they looked at him, they saw forefathers struggling against Jim Crow, Jane Crow, terror, somebody now symbolically entering this White House built by black slaves. You see. Now that is in a narrative, just like John Hope Franklin's From Slavery to Freedom, and it's a narrative that is powerful at a very thin symbolic level that cannot be denied. Then the question becomes, who is he? What is he about? What are his priorities? What kind of visions does he have? And it was clear: Wall Street, drones, mass surveillance, no focus on new Jim Crow and prison industrial complex. And
Signing the Patriot Act.
well, that's part of the surveillance.
Oh, yeah.
When he reinscribed it. But of course, killing
yeah.
4 Americans with no due process, with the black attorney general signing on and so forth, absolutely. But the thing, but Hillary is interesting to me in this sense, that because she not only had that longer history, but her husband is so exemplary.
Notice he kind of
in
said that
neoliberal
like
opportunist,
Beyonce
you
when
see.
she says, my husband.
My
Okay, go
husband.
ahead. Her husband. Her
No, but the
husband.
difference is Beyonce didn't need Jay-Z to do what she needed to do. See, Hillary needed Bill. Hillary really did need Bill. That she rode his coattails, his coattails. How does she become senator of New York State? She just leapfrog over the whole thing. You see? That's riding coattails. And that wasn't a Freudian slip, but just it didn't come out right. You see? But so that's part of the difference.
Yeah.
That. But you say for Obama, even Obama's blackness didn't in any way move you when he actually won?
Cornel, come on. Didn't we already know how this system is set up? I mean, didn't I coin that phrase, imperialist, white supremacist,
You
capitalist,
did.
patriarchy?
That's true, but I'm talking about something irrational here.
Yeah, well, I ain't irrational.
Oh, I see. I got you. All right. All
And
right.
in fact, I remember one of the earliest lectures I gave, people asked me, did I think that his presidency would make a difference for black men? And I said, similarly to you, that I felt that the symbolic image was so powerful and so meaningful. And I told the story of the 2 little black boys employed in the White House, where the one of them says to Obama, is your hair like mine?
Right.
And Obama can't hardly hear him, so he says, you know, he asks again, is your hair like mine? And Obama says, why don't you touch it and see? And the little boy is afraid initially, but he finally touches it. I see that as the kind of moment we've been talking about in these past few days about what we need to offer our children. You know, because Lorraine Hansberry loved to say that the only thing that should discredit us in the eyes of our children is that we haven't dealt with this color caste system. We haven't dealt with the aesthetics of white supremacy. But in that moment, he gave that little boy the affirmation. And you know, some little person had told that little black boy, he ain't like you. His hair ain't like yours. Repeatedly. So that moment was a really deep and profound moment. If we think about all the psychoanalysts who've written about object constancy, the mirroring, that was that I felt was what Obama offered to black people, that symbolic mirroring, that when Jackie Wilson said, your love has lifted me higher than I've ever been lifted before, for a lot of black people, that was the messianic, charismatic feel of Obama. But, you know, for others of us, we were looking at his track record, where he stood, and the man had pretty much fundamentally stood in middle ground spaces.
No, and that's true. That's true.
And so, I mean,
His language and rhetoric tended to move in populist and crypto-progressive directions. But it was just speech. He had Tim
But what do you
Geithner
feel?
and
Okay,
Larry
let's
Summers standing
go
right
deep
next to
about
him,
this.
you see.
What about the black people who feel that people like you and I should not criticize other black people? Even I felt at times like, God, won't Cornel let up on Obama? He just won't let the brother have a moment. And a lot of black people felt, you know, that he was a traitor, that Cornel was a traitor. And that's when so much hate began to flow. And it really did teach me a lesson about what it is to be a dissident intellectual in this society, how quickly the tide can turn, how quickly people move from talking about his brilliance to people, I mean, so many people saying he was mentally ill. That was so deep. You know, they couldn't say they didn't agree with the brother, that talk about his analysis, But they were critiquing him for personalizing, and then they were personalizing, like, we're going to talk about his mental health. You need to call up Cornel and straighten him out. And
the interesting thing about it, though, see, when I called him a black puppet of Wall Street oligarchs, they didn't accent Wall Street oligarchs. They just talked about the puppetry.
Exactly.
You see, so just in a metaphorical sense, it's not too clever, but it's still pointing toward a system. You can have white puppets. You can have Catholic, Jewish, Buddhist puppets of a Wall Street oligarchic power in that sense. But they only accented that puppetry. But see, my response was this. I would tell him, I would say, I am a traitor to mendacity. No doubt about that. You see? And that it actually is motivated by a deep love for poor and working people that begins on the chocolate side of town, right? And I don't love black people to be popular with black people. I love them because they're worthy of being loved. If they could shoot me down, I'm going down loving them. They could wound me, they could bruise me, they can scar me. That's not the point. You don't love somebody just for reciprocity in that way. Now, once it gets micro-social, maybe it's different.
Well, I was thinking especially, Cornel, about the woundedness.
Yes, yeah. The wounds are real.
And I see that it's also an effective tool of silencing.
Oh, and dismissing, trivializing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And that
but you had the same things throughout your career, don't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. But those men, especially that fawned all over you, and that were symbolically sucking his dick, that were talking about, always talking about how brilliant Cornel West was. Those men were never going around talking about how brilliant Bell Hooks is. Now, I got to say that I got my brothers in the audience today that are different brothers altogether. Okay. and so that's been a change up, both in terms of black male. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to focus on black maleness and transformation is that there's so much emphasis on black male sexism, homophobia, misogyny, that we lose sight of the black men that are trying to carve out different ways of living, thinking, and being in the world. And let's face it, if he was just a regular old street black nigga, when I said, you a player still, he really hit me in the mouth.
I would hit you.
If you were a street dude being
no, we got different kind of Negroes on the street now. A lot of different kind of black folk on the street, because I am a street brother now. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's true.
I'm going to let him have this.
I really, no, but I wouldn't hit you in the mouth.
But I'm talking about how regular dudes deal. With the whole question of a woman standing up, critiquing them, and I'm not just talking about black women. I'm talking about any woman who dares to critique, we just have to look at the numbers of violence against women by men in patriarchy. And remember, my whole thing that I've said every day, patriarchy has no gender. So I don't want to pretend that, men are violent and we are women, we're so sweet and kind. Not. If you look at the children that women have autocratic rule over, children become their slaves. They're niggers. We will never know until children have a collective voice how much violence women do to children. And frequently, in our cases, we get care from these women that also do violence. So then it's hard to speak resistance, because who wants to be abandoned by their mother, no matter how cruel or unkind she may be? So, talk a little bit more, Cornel. Have we made inroads into the sexism, the misogyny, the violence?
I think legally we've been able to push through some incremental reforms that ought not to be overlooked. But in terms of the cultural ways of life, I still see regress. And I gave you an example of this when I was talking about the music. You see, when I was coming along, when Otis Redding say try a little tenderness,
all right,
which is different than say my name, say my name, say my name. That that to be a black man actually meant that it was courageous to take a risk and be vulnerable. That's what the falsetto was about in the Marvin Gaye and the Eddie Kendricks.
Okay.
And the Russell Tompkins Jr.'s of the Stylistics, or Ted Mills of Blue Magic.
This is my lover's prayer. I hope it reaches out to you. Because you see, my life has been a lonely thing.
Lonely thing. Well, see, that was a strength. You see,
All right.
David Ruffin would go way up. Brother Gerald of the Manhattans would go way up even when they didn't have falsetto, because it was a vulnerability, but it was a source of dignity and strength in black men. When was the last time you heard a black brother sing with a sweetness and gentleness and kindness the way Otis did, and try a little tenderness? Now, it's around, but it's hard to find, difficult to find. And if so, it's already recuperated in a deeply patriarchal discourse. Oh, he is kind, soft, feminine. Then we're on the road to homophobia.
Uh-oh. Talk about it, Cornel.
See what I mean? And this is not just our dear Sylvester. Sylvester had both. That Negro was a genius. I saw him 5 nights in a row in Reno when I was getting my divorce. Because you can get a quick divorce in Reno. Y'all know that, huh? 6 weeks is over. Sylvester come to town. He got both of them. That's way back in 1979. Where is it today among the young brothers? That's why when I spend time in the hip-hop studios, that's exactly what I do. I come and say, you know, I come from a people who produce originals, and I see too many copies among y'all. You see? So Luther was gentle, and he could be different. Barry White was gentle, but he could be different. We can go across the board. Sugarfoot, Ohio Players, Heaven Must Be Like This. Is that the same group that sang Skin Tight? Roller Coaster? Yes, it is. Because there's a variety of passions and emotions available to black men that allowed for our humanity to be expressed, even given the viciousness of the white supremacist structure that was coming at us. And we had more control over our product.
All right.
This is very important. I think Otis was actually killed because of his attempt to create an independent label. In the same way Curtis Mayfield, they tried to crush Curtin when he pulled a genius from St. Louis named Donny Hathaway, and another one named Leroy Hudson out of Howard University with a Roberta Flack on his label, or the Natural Four of Richmond on his label. All of them sweet, soft, gentle, sophisticated, subtle, mastery of craft, because Curtis would have it no other way. He was a gentle genius. You see? Now, where do you have that now? This is what I mean by regress, you see.
And what can we do, though, Cornel? What is to be done?
Precious memories. We got to tell the young folk, you come from a great people. You need to connect with the best of who you are, what went into you, and you don't even know what went into you. You got to exemplify it.
Teaching as the practice of freedom.
And provide examples of it. Erykah
Yeah.
Badu, Raheem Devon, Anthony Hamilton. We can go Angie Stone, Jill Scott, and others. Just the examples that are not mainstreamed and streamlined, but because the examples are there. I mean, our young folk are still a quite magnificent slice of humanity. They just have so much contempt coming at them.
That's deep. Since the relationship experts say that it is the presence of contempt in your bond with another, your partner, your wife, your husband, whatever, that signals that the relationship will not make it. So we might ask ourselves, is it so much the predominant presence of contempt, much of which has been brought to us through misogynist hip-hop music, and we know there's liberatory hip-hop music, but not that music that we hear about the most. You know, Cornel and I could stand here and talk for a long time, but the brother's overworking. He's got some other commitment. So we do want to open it up for a few questions, and you know how it is. With that Buddhist loving kindness, if you are trying to give a speech rather than just asking a question, I will ask you to move on to your question. Who's ready with a question?
Can you talk about, Cornel,
Your name?
Oh, my name is Lamar. Can you hear me? Cecil Taylor. Can you talk about Cecil Taylor? I've never heard you talk about
Oh, yeah.
Cecil is like by everything.
he is.
I thought I was your everything, but
Oh yes.
but
No,
I have sat at the feet of Cecil, and risen to new heights. So I understand. Do you know who Cecil Taylor is? All right.
He's one.
Lamar, tell people.
Well, Cecil Taylor is the most brilliant free jazz pianist that we've ever known. And if you talk about philosophical, the philosophical tradition, intellectual black tradition through music, he is such a free black man. I mean, he, in a philosopher, I want you to riff on that.
No,
I
think you said it, brother. I think, and I salute you. And part of it is, see, there's certain folk in the constellation who are beyond, not just beyond my grasp, because I feel them so deeply. It's hard to just talk publicly in a quick way. You know what I mean? Coltrane's like that too. Chekhov was like that in literature. That it's hard to just put it in a nutshell. Anything put in a nutshell belongs in a nutshell.
Okay, I'm going on
But
to
his genius is something that is
some other
unbelievable.
question. Thank you, Lamar. Lene, do you have a question? Lene is a DJ, and she's a brilliant thinker, scholar. She, in fact, reminds me of Cornel West when she's talking.
Connection. I just maybe want to put out two names of folks that are doing, like, kind of having that falsetto. No, I just want to put out two names. We need it. So, hello. No, I do appreciate just the stream of consciousness, but living archive that you are, and knowing the importance of what it means to be a black person managing our musical archives. Those are national treasures there. So I mean, clearly you know that, but I'm just that's a brilliant thing to see. But also Bilal and D'Angelo, when we talk about falsetto, and then I do want to just say Prince. You know what I mean?
All
we
right,
know that,
all right.
but very specifically D'Angelo and Bilal. I just want to say their names.
I also want to
With that
tell
dialogue
you
with
that.
Questlove, we talked about D'Angelo giving Questlove's crucial role in the album itself. Very much so.
Cornel, I want you to listen to Lene's podcast with bell hooks and music.
Oh, Lord, right? On Bilal, too. Well, he and I were on the same album with the Choices with Terrence Blanchard. Right. And so when I got it, now he sang at the tribute to Curtis Mayfield. And just took it to heights.
Would you please tell the audience about your work with bell hooks and music?
Okay. No, there's not. Hold on. This is not about. Oh God. Hi. Okay. So I'm a DJ. I'm a woman DJ.
All right.
Actually, I'm a DJ who's a woman. There's a distinction. I'm not a female DJ, not to be confused with an exception to the rule, but I am a DJ who's a woman. And I've been doing these podcasts where I write liner notes and kind of look at the social and historical context of music and African music in the diaspora, very specifically electronic music, which is interesting because on the other side of the drum machine is look what Africans are doing with the computer. Look at what we're doing. We're still maintaining the drum through the computer. And so I met Belle because I was invited to the University of Kentucky to do one of my podcasts, one of my mixes, and it's called Soulful Critical Thought, The Making of a DJ Scholar. And I just looked at her work, looked at the catalog, I read most of her work and kind of expressed what her work meant to me through music. And so on that you have, Mary Don't You Weep, I have Bilal on there, I have some underground Prince on there, I have some underground hip hop because in the 90s, she spoke, she advocated for the kind of a new lens to be used to talk about underground hip hop. So I included Mos Def and just kind of reached in her roots to figure out what would be an embodiment of her work through music.
So how can people get this?
It's at www. No, but it's because I feel like it's a commercial. It's actually just DJ Lene Denise Podomatic. You can find it. Google it.
Thank you. That was a bit long, but worthy. A question over here. Your name, brother? Carl, you got a question after this, brother?
Okay, hey now, okay, y'all are funny. I will let y'all know. They are hilarious. I think we were in church for a minute and then we got into an episode of Sex and the City or something. I don't know. But anyway, listen, I have a question. And as a black male, I kind of struggle with this. And I don't want it to come off as being very elementary. The look on your face is kind of troubling, but I'm just curious to know, like, I understand that sexism is a system and that it exists, but I don't quite understand exactly what exactly black male sexism is. Like, how is a black male, like, where's my system to oppress black women? Like, I don't understand that. So I don't know if y'all can provide some information.
The first thing we got to say to the brother, go online and get you a reading list. And the other thing is, don't think sexism, think patriarchy. Because I think black men can understand their role in the sexism better by understanding what patriarchy is and how it functions. Carl, what were you going to tell us?
Oh, that was quick.
We gotta be quick. Cornel got
Okay.
stuff.
Well, let me be quick. Carl Dix, Revolutionary Communist Party, okay? And what I wanted to do was to pose the two questions that I posed when we talked last night at Columbia about mass incarceration. One question is, what kind of people do we want to be? The other is, what kind of world do we want to live in? And the intersection between the two of them. You know, because Cornel and I are working on this, both in terms of the October month of resistance to mass incarceration, going on this month. Get with it, go online and check it out, get ready for October 22nd, but also the November 15th dialogue that Cornel West is going to be doing with Bob Avakian, the leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party. So those two questions and the intersection, if you think there is an intersection, we can
There
get
is
into
an
that later.
intersection, but I mean, we'd have a whole new talk scheduled to be able to answer those
that
questions.
question. No, that's true.
I mean, obviously, since I'm the high priestess of love, I think that part of how we approach a lot of this is through love. I mean, one of the things, I have to go back to the James Brown movie, one of the things that I found so disturbing was that they allowed the little light-skinned brown boy to play James Brown, when we know so much of the trauma of James Brown's life was that he was perceived to be black and ugly. And he was tortured, psychologically tortured and abandoned. So that when we see him growing up to be misogynist, cruel, there's a backstory. And unfortunately, the film, catering as it did to the white viewer, did not try to give us that backstory. I even had a white person say to me, well, we couldn't have had an unattractive black boy playing James Brown because we wouldn't have identified with his pain. And I'm always telling people, within the context of white supremacy, dark-skinned black people suffer the most in the dailiness of life. There are special hatreds reserved. So that was too long, Bell Hooks. What's your question? Stand up, tell people.
I can't hear you on the live stream. That's why I'm making you guys.
Oh, okay.
The dangerous live
Live
scream.
I'm Joseph Matthews,
Joseph.
and a friend of Bell and Cornel, and also a dean of students at a Brooklyn school. I'm having an issue with, at my school currently, we've had 40 suspensions in this month since school has started. 39 of them have been males, 1 female. And so I'm struggling with this question of, are we creating young men who will grow up to hate women and be their abusers? And it's 99%.
Well, that answer is yes. But
And
go on.
right. But how do we address that when 99% of my staff are white female women?
No, it sounds like the white sisters got a lot of work to do. When you take on the awesome task of being a teacher, and every child is precious and priceless, and then you move and deal with black and brown, and probably not too many red. That is in Brooklyn. Yes. The black and brown children. As a white teacher, it means that you're going to have enough courage and empathy to get inside of their world and have a sense of what they're up against, so that your teaching can be not just on the surface, but
Well, we
skin
know that
deep.
so many grown white people are afraid of black children. So the
This
same
is-
kind of
this is part
fears
of the
that they may
challenge.
have of an
That's
adult
right.
black man, they may have of a black male child. So
That's
we have to
exactly
really
right.
talk about what are white people doing to decolonize their mind.
That's the work that needs
know?
to be done. That's exactly right. But we also, I know we got some other questions, but we also have the class question, though. You got some black upper middle class folk who really don't believe that Precious Letitia or Precious Jamal is part and parcel of their collective fate.
All right.
You see, and this
Talk about it.
this is a class cleavage that has to do, and it's also generational, where the fears and all the stereotypes again in TV, film, video, and so forth, and this is why I think love, at its deepest level, is the only thing that can rupture that. And by love, we're talking about love of truth, love of knowledge, love of learning, love of justice, because love is a form of death. You see, market culture is a death-denying culture. But love is a form of death. You'll never be able to get on the edge of that abyss to make the leap to know what love is unless you're willing to take that risk. Be it personally, in which your isolated, lonely self is killed in order for a new self to emerge and tangle with with another self with a smile, at least for a while. Or love of wisdom, where you undergo fundamental transformation. Your prejudices and presuppositions are called into question. That's a form of death, to be reborn, to become more mature in your critical orientation.
So are you able to do any kind of decolonization like that with these white women?
That's a good question.
I have been working on it, but you have a lot of people who think that just because they mean well, that they're right.
Yeah, otherwise known in some circles, white privilege.
Yes. Right.
And we are, I mean, luckily, I would say in part due to radical feminist movement, we have a greater understanding of the mechanisms of white privilege. And that will help us in this public education where more and more the teachers of black children and brown children are white-skinned. We wish we could be here forever, but alas, it's all his fault.
What time is it? What time is it? No, we got time. Wait, is this clock right, though, sister?
I
Look
know
like
I
it-
bought this little watch at the Salvation Army.
At 5:40.
Yes. What do you think, Maria?
Well, it
You're
says
in charge,
5:30.
not him.
We got time. We got time.
How much
Sister
time?
Maria said we got time.
What? 20 minutes. Okay.
Oh, is that all right, 20 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
Ron, are you trying to say something?
Just a quick question. Could you say something, given that you're talking about education right now, about the possibility of sustaining education as a practice of freedom?
Why everybody has to have these deep and, you know,
This is new school. This is new school.
I'm going to tell you truthfully, because I live in a small town in America, in Appalachia. I am a big proponent of homeschooling and homeschooling for boys, because I believe that the public school is such a violent context. It's, you know, let's not forget Foucault's lessons about the development of the prison system. The public school architecturally designed on the basis of the prison system. And so why are we surprised then that black boys within, and all boys within such a system, then behave like criminals? So I want everybody to ponder that, because I get so tired of people telling me that we need military schools for black boys. And I say, why is it no one ever says we need Montessori schools or we need homeschooling for black boys?
Absolutely.
Because that is the context where the genuine value of self can be nurtured. It will not be nurtured in the public school. The public school, I'm going to be cynical here, is going to become more and more a prison, a concentration camp for the young, so that we're not going to see what we have in the public school is that wonderful paragraph I talk about in Teaching to Transgress, that as teachers, we can know ecstasy in the classroom. So I want to give the props to every teacher in the public school that dares to defy and resist and bring the humanization into the classroom. And we know that those teachers are there. And we also know that they are frequently at risk. If you come to the 7 o'clock, we have this wonderful teacher, black male teacher of 8th graders, who teaches anti-racism, anti-sexism, and he's going to talk about his students and what it's like to educate them for critical consciousness. Another question?
Paideia School.
Your name, sweetie? Yes, you.
Yeah, we want to get you on the live stream.
Thanks very much. My name is Kelly Thomas out of Newark, New Jersey. Yeah, and also representing Sadie Nash Women's Leadership Project here. I wanted to know, what do you all pray for? Being a spiritual warrior, prayer warrior myself, and hearing you all start with that basis of spiritual grounding and that foundation of love. When you talk about, there was a little Jamal on the PATH train the other day that got up in my face because I asked him to be quiet on the train. He came on the train at 2 a.m., very rowdy, and I was like, hey, come on. There was grown men all over the train, and Jamal got in my face talking about if he had it on him, he was going to let it fly off. I don't even know him like that. You know what I mean? And no one said anything, My friend here, eventually stepped in and was like, okay, well, maybe what exactly are you so angry about? And I told him I loved him, but he's going off, There were grown men, young men, all sort of men and women. There were eventually some white women in the corner that ratched up and started like cursing at him and stuff. I'm telling him I love him. She's trying to dialogue with him, and he was like, well, if she had called me sir, but you came on the train like, da, 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 you know what I mean? So what, when I get quiet and when I really think about, as an educator, as a lover, as a citizen, what I need to be affirming for the young men, the women of all, peoples in my life, like what do y'all pray for, thinking about little Jamal and little Letitia? What exactly does that young man need to calm down all that rah-rah?
And how old was this precious brother? How old was he?
I would say he's about 17, 18 or so.
Oh, so he's not a little brother.
He was tall.
He's big and tall.
But he wasn't like, but there was strings of
No, but for you to express that kind of love, I thought he was 7 or 6. He's 17. I mean, my response is this. See, my prayer every night is to be a blessing. You see? And so much of the world is wrestling with frustrated, neglected love. So every attempt of expression of love, even if it doesn't work, is still worth it. My dialogues I have with the brothers in the prison, oftentimes when they reflect back on their lives, the things they remember were the moments when the love tried to flow and they cut it off. See what I mean? So they will remember that moment. Now, I was blessed to write a song with a genius named Bootsy Collins on the funk capital of the world. And the name of the song is When Love is a Threat. Because if you've been in the world for so long and everybody's looking at you, coming in negative ways, and you're not used to love, then when somebody, even for that one moment, that love, that's a threat to him.
Nikki Giovanni says, I ain't
Well, no,
shit.
Bootsy
You
do the
must be
singing.
lower than that to care.
I'm not a singer. I do spoken
Cornel.
word. But
I was just saying.
we about to get into our thing. But the
I was saying Nikki Giovanni always got it in her woman poem where she said, I ain't shit. You must be lower than that to care.
Ooh,
so that she gets that multiple layers of internalized oppression. But I want to say every day when I pray, I make my list of the individuals that I want to I believe in intercessory prayer, that my prayer for others has power in healing their lives. And I pray for my own healing. I have my 4 points that I have to pray regularly for. Divine will, that I know divine will for my life. Cornel and I talked earlier about the sense of divine calling, what motivates you in your life. It's hard to give words to the expression of, if I think I'm going in a direction and divine spirit says, no, bell hooks, that's not the direction I intend you to go in, that requires the kind of courage. My pastor said to me, your heart has to be ready to handle the weight of your calling. Because as I was telling Cornel earlier that I had written in my journal, my fear is fighting against my faith. And that for me is where prayer becomes the restorative. And I am very much into the power of gratitude. My sisters, we've had a lot of loss in the family. We do get together every night, my sister that lives where I live, to give thanks and to find both big and small, those things to give thanks in our lives for. Because a lot of times we forget the abundance here in this first world, imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy that many of us live in, even if we're poor. That when we compare the rest of the world, you know, when we're turning on water, I am pretty obsessed with water. And when people try to talk to me about gas and oil, I say, you know, we can live without gas and oil, but we can't live without water. And there are already places in the United States where women on welfare are having to pay for water. And be mindful, who's going to get hot water in the future? Brother, your question?
As a post-diasporic, reconditioned people in the imperialist world of today.
Take the mic.
Wow, let's see if he can remember how to say all that again.
Okay.
Start with your name, brother.
I'm Jordan Anderson. As a post-diasporic, reconditioned people in the imperialist world of today, of instant gratification, largely consciously disconnected, where do we see ourselves going as a people? Especially, you know, us black males, we're at risk. You know, how do you see us moving collectively when we're separated?
A lot of black men feel they're moving towards death. They're embracing death. I see it in the loneliness of aging black men. Over 60-some black men who have often severed all the bonds and the connections in their life. I don't care for his book, but the book Going Solo really is examining how many people in our nation are living alone, and especially men, and how many men are going into these kind of groups. They're not group homes, but they're like where you just have your room, and you may have a communal bathroom. And there are a lot of black men, especially black men. I mean, one of the things, these are things Michelle Alexander talked about. What happens to black men who are coming out of prison, who are poor, jobless, etc. And a lot of those men are going into these kind of homes, and there's no connection to be in these homes. It's a lonely, lonely life. And for a lot of black men, there's a feeling that death has to be better than this lonely life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's what we saw in Ferguson.
All right,
You
all
reached
right.
the point where the different gangs that have been going against each other came together. We hadn't seen it at that scale since Rodney King, Los Angeles, 1992. And when they looked in the eyes of not the police, but the National Guard with the tanks and ready for Baghdad-like activity, and said, "We ready to die."
Yes, that was scary.
Which side do you think was more fearful? The military was more fearful. Because if that's true in the south side of Chicago, that's true in Harlem, that's true in chocolate slices of Brooklyn, that's true in Black Newark across the board, there'll never be enough police. Never, ever. So then this is where the prophetic comes in. How do you channel that rage into love and justice rather than hatred and revenge? Because the rage sooner or later is going to bubble up. You reap what you sow.
It's
Sooner or later,
already
you're going to come
bubbling
to
up.
terms with it. And at that point, then they're going to be busting us saying, wasn't y'all talking about love? Y'all were two black folks talking about love. They all want to kill us. Let's talk about love now. Let's talk about love now. I say, well, no, we didn't do it just for some
question,
utilitarian. We did it because it's right, because it's moral, because
We'll
it's
get
just.
you the mic. He'll ask his question. Your name?
Hi, I'm Michael Cornel. It's nice to see you
How you
again.
doing, my
James
brother?
Logan introduced us 2 years ago at Earlham when he came to talk about Manning Marable. I asked you to give Bill Maher some Edward Said. I think you still should. My question is, to what extent do you think the comparison between the plight of our friends in Gaza and our friends in Ferguson is useful or not?
Oh, no, I think it's a very important juxtaposition that Gaza is a ghetto. Gaza is a concentration camp. Gaza is under vicious Israeli occupation. And they've been there a long time, and they're trying to come up with ways of sustaining themselves with no control over their borders, their land, their sea, their air force, the sea, and food going in and out. Now, it has a different history in that sense. We have to tell a story about how did persecuted, hated, despised people for 2,000 years in the face of vicious attack, namely precious Jewish brothers and sisters, jumping out of the buildings in Europe, all trying to kill them, thugs like Hitler, landing on somebody else's land and having to raise a question. Black people had the same question in Liberia. You gonna coexist? You gonna dominate? Einstein said coexist. Ahakaham said coexist. Jabotinsky said dominate. Netanyahu comes out of Jabotinsky. Begin, Jabotinsky. Jewish terrorist group. Ergon, and so forth, you see. So that domination and that dominating orientation more and more becomes widespread in this new state, given its attacks. Now, I mean, Hamas and the others were trying to kill innocent Jewish brothers and sisters, Israeli brothers and sisters, no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that, you know. Well, I mean, they succeed to a certain degree with suicide and so forth, but not at the level. We're talking about 500 precious Palestinian babies being facilitated by U.S. support and facilitated by American U.S. imperial policy. But then we had to tell a story about how did the black ghettos get to be. Well, it's a different kind of story, but you can see some of the elective affinities and similarities. There's some dissimilarities too, but the juxtaposition is real, and the folk who are involved in the struggle make it clear. They call the folk in Ferguson. This is what you do when the tear gas come your way. We're veterans at this. You're neophytes at the moment. You see what I mean?
We have a question right here, this sister up here. Pass that mic on. Were you trying to ask a question? Go ahead. You can ask it, and she'll wait for you.
Hi, I'm Quanda Johnson, and I wanted to ask you to speak a little bit more. You mentioned about James Brown and the little boy that played him, and the fact that being the darkest among black people they have the hardest time, and it's the worst. I want to kind of throw a wrench into that system, being a very light-skinned black woman who has very Afrocentric features. I grew up in a situation where I was harassed and tortured by everybody, white, black, dark-skinned black, because it was almost criminal to be as fair as I was, and I was a lot fairer then, with the map of Africa stamped on my face and hair. So I'd love for you to talk more about that conundrum within the African culture, African American culture, or Black American culture.
Well, I think that, one, we have got to talk more, my people, about trauma and the multiple faces of trauma. Because, yes, light-skinned black people have often experienced grave trauma, a lot of it in the color caste system at the hands of other black people. But I am saying that there is a particular trauma that visits itself upon dark-skinned black people that I think those of us who are lighter can't even name. Right. You know, my sisters that are dark, what you face when you go out of your house every day. They don't get asked, I get asked, oh, what country are you from? You know, they don't get asked, what country are you from? You know, I mean, it's a total different experience. And as black people, I think, going back to issues of whether we're traders or what, we have been unable to talk about the ways in which the color caste system divides us. And what I will say about the lighter you are, the greater you have a chance for change. Whereas if you are that little dark-skinned black kid that's been treated like a monster from day one, because, you know, if you're a lighter-skinned black person, somebody may love you along the way. Somebody may want to take you home along the way, but we may not find that among darker-skinned black people in our society. Okay, we're ready for you, my sister, my pretty, beautiful, dark-skinned black sister.
Thank you.
Your name?
My name is Marlena Franklin, and one of the questions I have is, when there are tragedies of death in predominantly white communities or all white communities, one of the things I notice and I admire is there's a group of psychologists or therapists to take care of the children and parents involved in the aftermath. Our children are deeply in pain, I feel. And we don't seem, this is where the churches come in, we don't seem to be able to give them that support because they're going through trauma every day.
Well, I think this is the negative side of Christianity, that the way we have to critique Christianity, because so often Christianity has tried, people in the name of Christianity have tried to say, don't try to heal, don't see a therapist. If I remember when my brother was dealing with his drug addiction, it was like, just pray about it. If you took it to Jesus, you would be okay. And there's a lot to be said for taking it to Jesus and your therapist, you know.
Sometimes you take your therapist to Jesus too.
Another question, back in the back, you're wearing a hat?
As a black woman, I can hear and relate to what you're saying and understand and see what that means for me and for my black community. So I guess my question is I think I'm fine. What is it that you're seeking in giving to the non-black and brown members of the audience?
Well, we are constantly seeking to educate as the practice of freedom. And I can tell you, every non-black person in this room has to have that same decolonizing education to resist imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. So to me, it's like we come to the water. We may drink for different reasons, but the point is to quench our thirst. And so that I think that everyone in this room has the opportunity to take something away from this room that will quench some thirst within you. As we begin to close, one of the things I want to say, part of what's the fun of talking with Cornel is that we both do believe in fun. That's why we danced our way to tenure at Yale and through a lot of the pain and the suffering and went to church, black church at Yale, the sense of what it means. I mean, Paulo was very clear that we should have delight, that there should be joy in struggle. That's right. So we leave you with that, to take joy in struggle. If you're struggling in some way where you can't find any joy, it's time to step back, reevaluate, and consider, is there a struggle that can restore to me that sense of joy?
All I can say is that's the last word, because that's right on. It's the nail on the head. Thank you so much, Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks in the house. Bell Hooks in the house. I love you. That was a rich song. This is not the last time. Maybe you know that. No. That was so rich. I'm sorry.